welcome everybody to problem solving section of chapter 4. So let us start from a situation with cold weather. So before answering the question, let us try to draw our demand and supply graphs. This is our price quantity, and let's have a separate colors for supply curve and demand curve. So obviously all of the questions are about demand and supply shifters here. And first question was about cold weather. So let us think how the cold weather can affect our supply and demand equilibrium. Idea is very simple here. Cold weather damages the orange crop, reducing the supply of oranges. And as a result, the supply curve will shift to a new position, which will be approximately here. Here is our S2. And now, as you can see, we will have a reduced quantity, obviously, because supply have reduced. And at the same time, as demand stayed the same, the price will go up. So basically, buyers will be competing for the left oranges, suggesting higher price just to get this orange. So this is the first case. Now let us go to B. Okay, now in case of B, the situation with weather. To answer this question, we should firstly think how the weather change in New England can affect the demand in the region of Caribbean. So here the logic is the following. People often travel to the Caribbean from New England to escape cold weather. So the demand for Caribbean hotel rooms is normal, is in equilibrium until there is a weather change in New England. And at this moment, when in the summer, let's say, fewer people will travel to Caribbean because northern climes are more pleasant at that moment. So the result will be that tourists from New England will prefer to stay at home as the weather is good. And what we will have a new demand. Demand will be shifted. And this will reduce, as you can see, both the equilibrium quantity and equilibrium price. The next one, about a war. So you should try to link these all situations together to try to understand what will be the economic implications. So when a war breaks out in the Middle East, many markets are affected, obviously, because a large proportion of oil production takes place in the Middle East. The war will disrupt the oil supplies, shifting the supply curve for gasoline to the left. So let us show this on our graph, and the result will be higher equilibrium price and lower equilibrium quantity. So this is what will happen in the market of oil. But at the same time, we should remember that we are discussing two different markets here. The second is the market of the used Cadillacs, right? So let us have another graph for our market of Cadillacs, used Cadillacs. And let us understand what will happen here. So the idea is that the gas, the price of gas and the cost of operating used Cadillacs, and we are emphasizing used here because we want to emphasize the fact that these cars are run on gas. So basically the cost of operating Cadillac will increase as gas and Cadillacs, if you remember, those are complement products. As a result, the demand for used Cadillacs will decline as people in the market for the cars will not find Cadillacs as attractive option. So let us show the demand shift. Here is our new demand with obviously lower equilibrium price and quantity. However, there is a second effect. If we can think about this, what will happen? Let's say you have a Cadillac and it's not profitable, it's very costly to drive this car. One of the options is that you will try to sell and get rid of Cadillacs and search for more affordable options, right? And what will happen in the market of Cadillacs? The supply of the Cadillacs will increase as more and more people will try to sell their old Cadillacs. And this point will be our new equilibrium, which will be approximately the same equilibrium quantity as we had before the war in the Middle East. However, we will have obviously lower, even lower equilibrium price as compared to what we have discussed from the first change. Okay, to think about the solution of this problem, we'll observe actually two situations. In the first one, again, we have our, let's say, usual supply and demand curves. And let's show the shift in the demand curve. So let's say we have this new shift in the demand curve, and this is our D2. And as you can see from the graph, the equilibrium price and quantity both will go up. So the statement that an increase in the demand for notebooks raises the quantity of notebooks demanded but not the quantity supplied, in general is false. However, there is at least one situation in which this statement may be correct one. And this situation is somehow connected with the future chapters, with the next chapters we will discuss later. So basically, as you can see, the change in the price and the equilibrium price and quantity are affected by the shift in the demand and supply curves, right? So let's say these are our two demand curves, the first one and the shifted one, but also by the slope of these curves. So let's say we have a specific case of a supply curve. Let's observe what we will have. We'll have, obviously, from initial equilibrium point, we will have an increase in the equilibrium price. But what about quantity? The quantity stays the same here. Of course, if we'll have a more precise graph, it will be more vivid. However, even from this graph, we see that there is almost no change in the quantity demanded. How this can happen? This can happen only in the situation when the supply is fixed, which means that despite of a change in a price and change in the demand, the quantity supplied is fixed and the markets can supply only this quantity. Again, this is a very specific situation. So this is at least one situation in which the statement that an increase in the demand for notebooks raises the quantity of notebooks demanded but not the quantity supplied is true. Okay, next one. So we have again our supply and demand curves before any change. Now let us discuss what will happen if people decide to have more children. So it is logical to assume that if people decide to have more children, they will want larger vehicles for hauling their kids around, right? And their families. So the demand for minivans will increase. At the same time, supply will not be directly affected. And the result will be a shift in the demand curve, which, as you can see from our graph, will result in a higher equilibrium price and higher equilibrium quantity. Now let us also discuss the next situation. So let's say steel workers go on strike, right? So if a strike by steel workers raises steel prices, and steel prices for the market of minivans is a input price, right? One of the shifters of the curve. The cost of producing a minivan rises and the supply of minivans will decrease. Demand in this case will not be affected. The result will be that, let's just graph our new supply curve, which will be something like this one. And if we look at the intersection of the new supply and demand curves, there will be a very small change, or it is even possible that there will be no change in the equilibrium quantity, but at the same time, the equilibrium price will go even higher. So this is a situation when we take the both scenarios together. And you can also think if, let's say, steel workers have their strike, but the demand towards minivans stays the same. You can think of this separately. And the next idea, the development of new automated machinery for the production. Again, first step here, you can think of how this will affect our curves. Is it a demand or supply shifter? Or there will be just a shift on the curve, on the initial curve? If you remember, the development of new machinery is a technology, and the technology is one of the supply shifters. The idea is that this development will improve the production process of the minivans and most probably reduce their costs. And thus, it will shift the supply curve, increasing the supply. For this one, we will need to erase our previous supply curve, discuss this scenario separately. So let's say here is our supply, here is our demand. We have an increase in our supply. And let's see what will happen. As you can see, the equilibrium quantity actually rises. The equilibrium price goes down. And this is a very good example to understand how technology and how innovation is important. And as our model shows, technological developments provide an opportunity for businesses to serve more customers, produce more at the lower cost at the same time. And we have also two more scenarios. One scenario is the rise in the price of sport utility vehicles. So we can think in certain way this will have certain effects on the minivans. The rise in the price of sport utility vehicles affects minivan demand because sport utility vehicles are kind of substitutes, not direct ones, but substitutes for minivans. And the result is an increase in the demand for minivans. Supply is not affected, obviously, at least in the short term. And as the demand shifts, the equilibrium price and quantity of minivans both rise. And we'll just skip this one because we have already discussed the situation. And the last one, the reduction in people's wealth. And this is a very common one again. This is a situation with one of the most important demand shifters, if you remember, which was income. So again, let us get rid of these points from the previous exercise and let us think what will happen. The reduction in people's wealth caused by a stock market crash reduces their income, leading to a reduction in the demand for minivans, because we assume that minivans are normal goods. And here this is an important point. If we assume that minivans are not normal goods or inferior goods, you can think what will happen here. I'm leaving this for your thoughts. So again, assuming that minivans are normal goods, the reduction in income will shift our demand and thus reducing the demand. And what we will have both lower equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. Okay, TV screens, DVDs, and tickets. These are good examples of related products. The first step to understand how to solve and answer these questions, you should think whether these products are substitutes or complements. So let us start with the first one. DVDs and TV screens. These are more likely to be complements, simply because you cannot watch DVD without a television, right? We are not discussing a scenario when you can turn on your PC or any other hardware. But most logically, we can assume that these are complements. DVDs and movie tickets are likely to be substitutes because a movie can be watched at theater, at cinema, or at home. Again, these are very simple level assumptions. You can think of high level assumptions. You can try to enter the field of behavioral economics or marketing even and assume that if a person watches a movie at a cinema and he or she likes that movie, the next step will be that they will decide to buy a DVD to have opportunity to rewatch it at home. But on a very simple level, our assumption is that those are substitutes because you can watch movie either at home or at cinema. And TV screens and movie tickets, again, if TV screens and DVDs are complements and DVDs and movie tickets are substitutes, the logical conclusion is that TV screens and movie tickets are likely to be substitutes. The technological improvement would reduce the cost of producing a TV screen, shifting the supply curve to the right. Let us show this. Here it is. The result is that the equilibrium price will fall, with the equilibrium quantity will rise. Again, very similar to a situation with production improvements in minivans market. The next one. So the reduction in the price of TV screens would lead to an increase in the demand for DVDs, because TV screens and DVDs, as we have already discussed, are most probably complements, right? And the effect will be a shift in the demand curve, and the result is both increased equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. And the last one for this question, the reduction in the price of TV screens would cause a decline in the demand for movie tickets because TV screens and movie tickets are substitute goods. The decline in the demand for movie tickets would lead both to the decline, let us first show the decline, and this will lead both to the decline of equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity.